Now we are here for the Reading's Finest section for episode 2. And let me tell you, I am super excited for this guest in particular. Can we get a round of drums or something like that?
The man, the myth, the legend.
Y'all niggas,
Glyph.
y'all hang out too much.
I'll take that.
Yeah, it's bad. You should have saw me and Marie yesterday. Actually, sorry, real sidebar, real quick. We were saying things at the same time, like all day, and then Johnny's sitting there looking at us like, "What y'all? Oh, y'all are friends." But yeah, we are so excited to have you. You're a
Definitely.
poet,
Hey, thanks for having me.
journalist.
Yes.
My
Thank you
favorite,
for
my
coming.
favorite poet, actually.
Really?
Yes,
Well,
definitely.
I'm right here, my nigga.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'm sorry, Bree. We'll collab.
That's cool. You're my favorite poet too.
Yeah,
I'm right here, though.
Right. But yeah, no, for real. Thank you for coming on the show. Just the first question we always ask is a broad and blanket question, but
and a fun fact.
yeah, who is Glyph? Start with the fun fact.
Fun fact: I'm an avid rock climber.
Oh, wow.
Oh, where?
Oh, wow.
Where you go rock climbing?
I rock climb
I'm scared.
in Berks County, Lebanon County. I go to West Virginia, and I'm headed off to Cali next week.
Oh, wow.
Take me with
That's
you.
dope.
What got you into that?
What got me into that is I love nature. I love to be outside. But really, it was the passing of my father. I wanted to spend more time with my brother. He was real into it.
Yeah.
Went over to the gym, and I sucked at it.
Yeah.
But just like everybody else who sucks at it, they start to get addicted, and I haven't been able to kick it since. So
All right, that's dope.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
I'm into it.
unique.
That's
That's a cool
different.
fun fact.
Yeah.
That might be the best fun fact we've heard.
Really?
But who is Glyph?
Glyph, I am also known as Anthony Orozco. I'm a reporter with the Reading Eagle, a poet, as you say, and I'm a resident of Reading for the past, I think it's been, 5-6 years now?
Mhm. So, first, I just want to, where did Glyph come from is
Yeah.
my question.
Yeah.
Glyph, yeah. Well, I think with multifaceted people, they have multiple personalities. I don't like to, I wouldn't say that I'm on the same tier, but, you got Jay-Z, Hove.
Okay, yeah.
People have different names
Right.
for themselves. And, just to create different lanes. And so Glyph, for me, it, touches back to ancient knowledge, hieroglyphs,
Yeah.
and also the written word. And so, with my pen, I want people to respect my pen and know that I'm here for the written word and the spoken word. And so that's where Glyph comes from. I am the embodiment of written word.
Wow. I think I remember you saying that before. One of
And
your
also, I used to
poems.
have a whole thing that was like, glyphs are a symbol
Yeah.
that represent something, and we all can have the potential to be something that represents something greater than ourselves.
Definitely.
Mhm. Oh, I fucks with
I'm
that
here
a
for
lot.
that.
Yeah, honestly. So how did you? Because you're new-ish to Reading.
New-ish.
Ish,
Sure.
not
Ish.
really. Yeah, it's been like 6-7 years, whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
last 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So talk about your move to Reading.
All right.
What attracted you here? What was it?
Well, I graduated from the University of Cincinnati in 2012, and I'm from the Cincinnati area, and I sent my resume everywhere, and especially into parts of the country where there was good rock climbing.
Okay.
Those people called me back. No, but they needed a Latino beat reporter for the Reading Eagle. They needed, in Reading of all places, a Spanish-speaking reporter. How they could not find somebody here, I do not know. But I came over, I tried out. I thought it went horribly, and they called me the next day and said, "Hey, can you start?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I was up for an adventure. I needed to change in my life. I needed, a closure of a chapter and the start of a new one. And so I came out here not knowing a single soul, no friends, no family, just a job. And now I have people who I consider family. I have a community here that I love, and so I'm happy to be here. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Dope,
super
man.
dope. So what have you gotten besides a job in Reading? Like, what have you learned or gotten or have been able to do?
Oh man, I've been able to do a ton. Well, one, I met a deep love of mine, my girl who I live with. We've been together for about 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and applaud, right?
Loyalty.
Loyalty.
And she's brought me into her family as well, so I've gained a family here. I've also gained beautiful friendships, deep friendships, and connections with the city. So unlike a lot of people, I don't just pop in the city for my job and then leave. I live here. I work here. I know people here. And I also like to give back. So that's also something that Reading has given me. It's given me the opportunity to give back. So that's something that is really profound to me.
I really mess with that. That's like super dope. Just like this idea of service that you started kind of getting a little more of. But with this idea of service and you being a person of color, especially at the Reading Eagle, we talked about earlier on this show, when it comes to people of color, there's a certain level of responsibility that we do have to have. So for you, going into the Reading Eagle, what is it like, especially for a local news organization, to be able to work in that, but also being able to tell authentic stories at the same time? How do you balance that out?
Well, actually, when you talk about responsibility as being a person of color, I think it's also important for me to shout out my Indigenous, First Nations, Native American people. Obviously, they're going through something right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's good to show solidarity to the people who were here long before any of us.
Well, that video did piss me off.
Well, also to keep it into context, for Native American history, that's nothing. It's nothing.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
So we have to keep it into context. I mean, I will not flaunt it, but I am a quarter Native, according to the DNA results.
Get that scholarship.
But beyond that, being a person of color, there definitely is a responsibility that I feel that is innate to tell our stories with authenticity and a level of realness. And also being able to translate that to a wider audience. Now,
Whiter?
Wider. I'm gonna let you decipher that. But to a bigger audience who may not know that culture or know those people, and also to keep it real, in Reading, Latinos are not the minority. All right, this is something that me and Marquise touched on the other day. Is that Asians and Black folks are the minority in Reading. And so there's also a responsibility where I have to keep my blind spots, in check.
Yeah.
Because I can think, I got to represent the Latinos. Okay. But what about the Black folks as well?
Right.
So, I mean, I feel a weight on my shoulders. I am the only person of color in the newsroom at this moment, aside from maybe somebody in sports who's there part-time. But so the weight on my shoulders feels enormous at this point in time. But I try to keep it real at all times. I do not hide. I do not act. I do not try to put on some sort of character. So hopefully that explains it.
No, it did. And it explained it really well. Because I always think, like, at least for you being a journalist, like, you're the gatekeeper of truth.
Yeah.
And so just like with that in itself, how has that shaped you and how you kind of navigate through life? Do you take something like your journalistic practices and do they translate into your everyday life?
Oh, most definitely. The objectivity, the ability or skill to look at a situation, remove yourself from it, or your own opinions from that, and try to look at it from all angles is something that I am absolutely grateful for, which actually I think arises from being biracial, coming from a mixed household. My mother's whiter than a paper plate, I like to say.
Dinner plate.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting that.
Whiter than rice and a snowstorm on a paper plate.
Wow. Shout out to moms.
I did not expect whiter than a fucking paper plate.
Yeah.
Wow. That's funny.
Earlier in the podcast, Marquise said he doesn't trust white women. White women, they're not all bad. One of them's down, I promise. At least one of them.
She riding.
You got the one.
In Hamilton, Ohio, there's somebody riding for you. I promise.
Her and Ariana.
But-
in context.
But coming from that multicultural, biracial household, and also being blessed/cursed with this chameleon effect of not being brown presenting,
Wow.
you get.
So you was just in this whole conversation. We were talking about Ariana Grande and like that racial
most
ambiguity.
definitely.
Yeah,
Most definitely. And being presenting as I am, I've been the undercover Mexican for a long time, and I've seen people say some wild shit and not know who's in the room.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
In all sorts of settings, whether it be professional or personal. And so that opened my mind from an early age, and I was so thankful for that. And I think that sort of translated into my professional life. And I think my professional life has bled into my personal life in that even more so now, I try to remove myself from situations, and I try to take all people into account.
Right.
Sometimes it can be to a fault that I give, devil's advocate, or I see the other
Right.
side. I make a lot of excuses for people, but to me, it's strategery. You're trying to figure out all angles, and you're trying to play all arguments in your head and see what is the truth.
Yeah, because I think it's something like for journalists in particular, it's always difficult because at least as a journalist of color, because I'm working on a project with somebody else that I'm doing, that I'm working with, and it's interesting because now they have to look at it from a certain level of responsibility, and for her being a Black journalist, what is that level of responsibility when you have to try and divorce your reality with objectivity? And so is it hard to balance out your emotions because it's so attached to you with your writing? I know we touched on it a little bit at the art event last week, just like when it comes to, all right, now am I pandering to social justice? Am I doing the right thing? Is it presenting off? Is the intent versus impact, is it all there? So how do you kind of balance that out when it comes to your writing too?
Well, luckily at the paper, every story that comes out with my name on it is not just my story. There's 3 to 4 people who are picking it apart, and I mean picking it apart, not just for syntax and grammar, but seeing about bias and how come you haven't asked this question. And so that's something I'm really thankful for in journalism, is that you have people from other backgrounds and other skills who are picking it apart and seeing where your faults are. Which also, in that conversation about, professional and personal, I put that into my personal life as well. I try to remove my ego. And if I'm fucking up and somebody tells me and it's true, you got to take that hard pill. You got to swallow that. So
He knows how to take his accountability.
Yeah. Well,
Trying
no,
to.
because it made me think about that, because last week when you had asked me, like, when you wrote the article on like the hood politics conversation, you had asked, did it come off right? Is there anything I would have said about it a little differently?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, snap. Like, I appreciated you asking that question, but I thought it was also really cool that you killed enough of your ego to ask something like, how can I do better? That means you're really genuine about the work that you do, which I thought I commend and I really respect that from a journalistic standpoint. Yeah.
And also I know that some people won't just come out and say, actually you kind of messed this up or that up.
Don't worry.
And I'd rather it just be up front. I'd rather it be a buck, as you say.
Don't worry, I'll keep it a buck with you. I mean, things are a little trash, but I guess fine. No, it was a good article though. Now, let's just slide out of your journalism life for a little bit, and let's talk about, we got 2 poets in the room and a TED Talk expert over here.
Hey.
Did you call it a TED Talk expert? AKA Mixie.
I feel attacked.
You Mixie, you should see.
So you
Mixie
gonna
1, Mixie 2.
You're gonna
Featuring Marie.
keep it a buck with Glyph, but not your co-host.
Right.
He called you Mixie. I know how to decode the hieroglyphs.
Shut your ass up. So for you, talk about your poetry, man. Talk about that. Where'd that come from? You writing for everything, to be honest.
Yeah. My poetry came out of conflict. It came out of violence, actually.
What?
Yeah, I got in a nice little fight in middle school.
And you wrote that nigga a poem?
No.
Kind
you
So I
go.
can't say it for your ass.
They sent me off to the bad school for a little while.
Oh.
And I took some, conflict resolution writing things. And I got into it. And then luckily some other teachers saw potential in me and they just fostered it. And I've been writing ever since high school. I mean, I started out making my own comic books as a kid.
Really?
Yeah. I used to make comic books, draw them. I mean, they were trash. They were all ripoffs of Dragon Ball Z and Superman.
I mean, that was the thing, though. Like,
You gotta
you
find your
just
influence
spray some-
somewhere.
Yeah.
Inspiration.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
So,
another fun fact. That's cool.
Yeah, that is a fun
and
fact.
I've
like
been
his fun
performing.
facts.
I've been performing poetry since high school. Like I've sort of took that leap into putting it out in front of people live as soon as I.
Because
knew
you
I
do
had it.
competitions.
I did competitions. I never really won any, but I always put myself out there. I think that's an important part of art.
Did you like the poetry out loud in high school? Were you a part of that?
No, I was not a part of Poetry Out Loud. We didn't have Poetry Out Loud, or I didn't know about it.
Okay.
But I did like other things. Like if there was a spot in town that was doing an open mic or doing a poetry competition, I would show up and I'd be like a 16-year-old. I look 16 years old. So back then I looked like I was 8. And I was like competing against like 30-year-olds and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
So yeah, I've been in it for a while.
And how do you, how would you, Lord Jesus, how would you style your poetry, or what kind of, where do you fall for like your poetry?
I don't know. It's a trip. You know, I like to say that I have a lot of flows. I have a lot of different ways to go about things. I can be a storyteller in a narrative style. That is, you know, that sort of touches back to journalism. I also really, really love the intricacies of rhyming and wordplay. I have a couple of poems where I like to, you know, do verbal gymnastics, I call it. And then there are other ones that are strictly for the page, where if you read them aloud, not much.
Okay.
But if you get to sit down with them for 10 minutes, you'll be like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't even see how this connects.
Right.
So there's some pieces like that. So I like to dabble in everything.
What's your favorite genre? Are you like, do you have a favorite, or one is like, I'm really good at this?
Ooh, I think some of my poems that shine are ones that are the verbal gymnastics. I think that catches people's attentions more. But I think some of my more simple, plain language poetry is some of my best. Whether people like it or not, I don't know, but I dig it. You know what I mean? Like some very simple, maybe 10 lines, 20 words all together.
Wow.
But if it touches on something profound and real and does it in a simple and concise way, I think that's amazing.
So you like haikus?
I wouldn't say that. I mean, I wouldn't say that.
For any writer, rapper, singer, poet, I always ask, what's your writing process like?
Ooh, yeah. So, touching on my ability to give back to the community, workshops. I'm doing workshops with Barrio Alegría. And part of that, the first one was sort of like my dissertation of how I go about writing.
Okay.
And it was just sharing it with people to see maybe if they could dabble in it, if it was effective for them as well. My whole thing is I write notes. So I will knock out like 2 or 3 pages of notes first. If I have a theme or a topic I want to write about, I'll just purge it.
Okay.
And I'll I'll commit to none of it. Like I don't care if it's trash. I don't care if I repeat myself. I just get it out. Because a lot of people wait for inspiration, and I think that is something that traps a lot of folks. I think you gotta go get it.
Okay.
And
like
so
that.
in that digging, in the mining, you find precious metals and materials and stones.
See, here
You
the
put that
poet coming
together,
out. The poet's
and
coming
you
out.
get some jewelry at the
Yeah.
end.
I fucks with
But
a
it
good
takes a lot of
metaphor.
sifting, right? It takes a lot of work. So
Wow.
I write my notes, I circle the jewels, the precious metals, I rework them, I play around with them. And then eventually the Etch-a-Sketch gets shaken, and then there's a new poem there.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I
it
like
takes me a
that.
long
That was
ass time to
poetic.
write a
That was
poem is what I'm
poetic
trying
in
to say.
itself.
It
though,
definitely
right? That was
was.
poetic in itself.
That was a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, because that makes a lot of sense. Like for me, I'm trying to but get more into writing. Just from a playwriting standpoint, like my mentor was like, yeah, you should actually like see what you can do with this. But for me, like I was supposed to submit a fucking playwright to the Fringe Festival, a play to a Fringe Festival, and I was just like, I was in my head way too much. So it was one of those things where I just need to get it out, because for me, I'm just like, all right, this gotta be perfect. This gotta be perfect. But also kind of reminding myself, it's good to be messy for a little bit, and then like let it all kind of sift into place.
And if
it's the hardest thing ever.
If you guys don't watch The Time, I could talk about writing process for a day. Like I love talking to other writers about how they do it, because you have the internal editor telling you no, you gotta change it, and then you have this one part of you that's just like bursting with light. You just want to get out onto the page, and it's sort of being able to compartmentalize.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's something that I pulled from journalism as well. Being able to compartmentalize. Like, nope, I'm gonna get it down on the page, and then I'll edit.
Right.
You can't stop yourself all the time.
Yeah, you got to start stream of consciousness kind of thing.
Yes,
Help me
but
out.
you also have to
sounds
be
like-
responsible, right?
About
You
it.
gotta like one thing I hate is when you can tell that a poet settled or a performer settled.
Wow.
Like it's a delicate balance, right? To be what is it? Improvisational and spur of the moment, and then also just like, all right, here I throw this together.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's a difference, there is some gold in being able to just speak it as it comes out, but there's also some gold in being able to make, fashion it into something that you want to share.
That's something we learned in theater. It's just like, we call it like, how do you heighten the stakes? And so it's just like, if you're playing it at such a certain level, you memorize the text. But there's a difference when you are like in the heat of that moment. And I always go back to Denzel Washington's performance in Malcolm. Like the rest of that speech, he improvised. Like he was just feeling it and was going, but they left it in there. Like Malcolm X didn't say those. That was Denzel
Yeah.
talking. Well, Malcolm coming through Denzel as the character
He channeled
talking.
Malcolm.
Yeah, so it was like it was fascinating to kind of see how that might work for. I know, especially for like you three when it comes to your poetry. I know like certain things you're just like, oh well, when you deliver, like what is it like for you when you deliver a poem for the first time? I think, do you rehearse them all the time? Because I know sometimes some people are just like, oh, it came out much differently than what I might have expected. Do you like that kind of?
Yeah, well, there is a whole part with one. I think, the written word is forever. Like, if I die, that written word will stay there and live beyond me. But there's something really exciting and volatile about life, right? And so with life, it's right in front of you, and it's happening right in front of you. And I love that, and I love what you brought up about theater, because part of it is theater. And some of my poems, I have to channel certain emotions to really convey it, or I'm just sort of like repeating it like this and trying to get it. No, you have to like transport yourself in somewhere so that you can bring everybody else with you, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And sometimes the poetry that I spit for the first time is, I don't know, like most of the time I'm really petrified when I share it the first time. Like I've done it a million times. I will go in front of a crowd of 100 people and not be shook at all. But man, if it's the first time I'm doing that poem, oh my God, man, I have no idea what's going to come out.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just thinking, please don't mess up. Please don't mess up. Please be fired, But, mostly nervous when I do my first poem.
I was going back to like your writing process and like how you just get it all out. That's how I am with like TED Talks. I would literally like, I could be like scrolling down Twitter and then like something like the survival versus love and love versus survival and stuff like that, being raised off that. Like I can go in like that, but like I'm not like poetry savvy, so I don't make it into a poem, but I just leave it like free writing basically. So that was like something I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not really a poet, but I can bring you to my TED Talk.
Yeah. And I mean, there's different styles. That's the beautiful thing about poetry, and also maybe the cop out is like anything's poetry, right? You know what I mean? Like, as long as I say it's poetry, like
No,
so.
no, really. Shoot, I feel like, sorry guys, but because I talked to Glyph outside of here, I pretty much feel like I know everything that I like would ask you.
But our listeners don't.
Right.
Yeah.
Fuck them listeners.
Not kids. We don't talk about them like that.
You're in timeout.
Yep,
right.
you're suspended next episode.
Thank you. Next, you guys got anything to ask? It's just I don't know.
No,
what made you want to give? So going back to the workshop, what made you want to give back to like other people? Because me as a poet, I'm pretty like, I don't need anybody to help me with my poetry because again, it's like your perspective. And then I actually realized that I need people to help me with my poetry after having my poetry sent back to me. So now I'm just like, wow, like going to a workshop would be helpful.
Well, one, I think there are tons of venues and opportunities for people to share their finished poetry, but I don't think there's a lot of opportunities for people to be with writers and share their problems and where they're getting stuck. And sometimes you just need somebody to, bump you up, stand on my shoulder. I'll get you over this hurdle real quick. And also the other thing is about my workshops is that I do not teach. I am not a teacher, or at least I'm not going to take that mantle on yet. What we do is help each other. I learn just as much as everybody else. And so I'm not standing above people. But what got me into it was Daniel Agusquiza from Barrio. He sort of is on this whole thing about acknowledging what you are. And if you're a leader, you're a leader. And he was always telling me, oh, you should do a writing workshop. And I'm thinking, I'm not worthy of it. Like, I'm just like everybody else. But he said, no, you should do it. And once I did it and I saw how many people showed up and entrusted me, not with teaching, but with sharing, I think it was a wrap from there on. Like, I want to do it every single month now. I'm on my third. We have been going every month. And it's amazing when you see these people open up and share what's inside of them, and you see the potential that's inside, because people show up and they don't even write poetry anymore. Oh, it's been years since I wrote. And then they crack open the book and they share 3 or 4 lines. This isn't really a poem. And then everybody at the table is fucked up after they shared 3 or 4 lines. And you're like, oh, you don't realize what you are.
Yeah.
You don't realize what you have. And also the other thing is responsibility. Again, we keep talking about this. Responsibility of the artist is to create. You cannot keep it inside of yourself. And that's something that I want to promote in other artists, is that you have all that beauty inside of you, not just because God or the universe gifted you with it to have inside of you, but because somebody else needs it. Somebody needs to hear it. Somebody needs to know they're not alone. Somebody needs to be woken up. Somebody needs to be shown something that they haven't thought about before. So it comes with responsibility. I think the workshops just come with the idea of, you know what? I have the ability to hold a workshop. People trust me. At least a couple of people do. And that's enough. Like, I can learn something. We can learn something. And then we can push positivity, beauty, elegance, and light out into the world, which is sorely needed right now.
What are the difficulties that you face as a writer? As a writer who is planning on being published, like for me, I was like, oh, I've always been told how great of a poet I am, and now people are like, actually, you're not that good. And then meeting like you and D. Will, I'm like, oh shit, I really ain't that good. Like, you know? So like what are just some challenges that you've faced that you can like tell us about?
If you look at any of the Glyph poetry Instagram stories around every month, there's a time where I just show all my rejections for that month.
I was
just
going
seen
to actually
that.
ask you about that.
Yeah, I get rejected all day, every day.
Damn.
But that's okay. That's okay. Like, you have to build that thick skin and realize people aren't going to be on it. Like, people are going to sleep on you for a long time. And maybe they have to see you in person. Maybe you have to hit them with a different flow. Or maybe you're just not good enough. And that's an important thing to realize and accept as an artist. So I share that because I think, you know what, you may see me at the poetry, Noah Ayala's thing, the poetry, and at the poetry workshop. You may see the beautiful photographs taken by Mateo Toro and Rhetorical. At mine, you think, oh, he you know, he's destined for stardom. But let's keep it real. Nobody's publishing my ass, except for a couple of folks. But and that's something also that I read in Stephen King's book. He has a memoir on writing. He said that he had a nail above his writing desk where he would put his rejection letters. Well, it got to a point where he needed a longer nail. And now, once he got on, any little piece of shit that Stephen King pumps out is gonna get published.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Everybody wants
Yes,
it.
that name.
And he even acknowledges, like, you know, it may not be the best story I wrote, but it brought me money. You know?
Yeah, got my check. Yeah.
So I think it's all just in time. And I think people just have to keep their egos in check and be willing for constructive criticism. You got to be open to what people say.
Definitely.
Because you know, from your perspective, you can only see from an angle. And there's a million other perspectives. People like to say there's two sides to every story. I like to say there's 6 sides to every die.
Oh, I was going to say that. It's like there's 3.
6 sides.
But that's fire. I
sides
like
to
that.
every die.
Whatever you can roll on that day.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Wow.
Louise.
That's a fact.
Man, just talks poetic.
I know. That's all that is. I was like, talks and metaphors. I love
What
it.
I'm concerned about, is like, so Glyph, you've been in Reading for about 5 years, and people talk who've been in Reading for their whole life and be like, there's nothing here. There's nothing to offer me. But you're like a living testament that there is something here. So what would you give, like, what advice do you have for anyone, whether it's a writer, a poet, a regular citizen?
My biggest thing for the longest time has been, it is what you make it. Like, it is what you make it. You can see challenges or you can see opportunities. And of course, it is really hard. Like, the city is in a bad way. We cannot ignore that. As a journalist, as a poet, as a citizen, you can't ignore that. But you also have to see it as opportunity. We have a great opportunity here to transform lives and perceptions. And, you know, I don't want to just like be blindly positive, but I do have a habit of being the eternal optimist.
Yeah.
So that's just something I can't shake, is like,
Yeah.
if you're positive about something and you keep it moving and you keep trying things and failing, maybe succeeding, maybe touching somebody, maybe learning about something you never knew, it's all worth it.
Right.
Yeah.
I fucks with that.
Yeah.
So, one, that was just dope just to hear you talk.
definitely.
Yeah.
But now, we're going to drill you with some questions.
All right. I'm gonna take off my jacket.
Already now.
I'm getting hot.
All right.
Uh-oh.
So for this part, thank you for Marie actually like pushing like the fun facts part of the conversation. Each of us go around and we're gonna go and kind of lightning round random questions at
Damn.
you.
Just click.
Favorite
All right.
author.
Don't expose me, y'all.
Now we gonna get you now.
Yeah.
All right. Marie,
Favorite
you
author.
can start.
What's your favorite author?
Favorite author?
Who's your
Poetry
favorite?
or
Book wise.
book wise?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh. I'm kind of crazy about Chuck Palahniuk right now, but you
What
know,
he wrote?
Fight Club, Pygmy,
I actually read
Choke.
Fight Club.
Yeah, so
That's fire.
but it's very transgressive stuff. Like half of the time, I'm like, God damn, why am I reading this?
Yeah.
Ugh, you know,
Can't look away though.
but it's kind of crazy.
Kendrick or J. Cole?
Kendrick. Well,
Keep it there.
No.
yeah. No. I mean, yes, Kendrick, of course. King Kendrick. I actually saw K. Dot
My man.
this summer, so
Me too.
Hey.
Fire.
Yeah.
What's your favorite poem that you've written?
ooh, favorite poem that I've written.
What's your favorite poem to perform? What is that?
I think conquest about my ethnicity and people mistaking me for one thing or the other. I think that one's my favorite to perform just because of the reactions that it
Okay.
gets.
Yeah.
And the verbal gymnastics, which I love.
Liquor, beer, or wine?
Ugh. I guess I've been on a beer thing
Yeah.
lately. I've been trying to get on my beer game.
Don't worry.
Because I certainly ain't liquor.
Don't worry. Jay and I got you. We can take it.
Favorite time of day?
Ooh.
that's a good one.
Late night.
You get most
I
of your
think-
inspiration at night?
Yes,
I was just about to say that. I think most
Late.
people do.
Yeah.
Favorite activist?
Favorite activist, living or dead?
Either one.
There's a ton of them. My favorite, the favorite. I don't know, man. I'm kind of a big fan about Malcolm X's whole journey because it's complex and it touches on that there is no black and white. You know, sorry for the pun, but there is no black and white. There's only shades of gray,
Mhm.
and people are complex and messy. And so I guess on the spot, I'll say Malcolm X at the moment.
Okay.
Favorite childhood TV show?
Favorite childhood TV show? I mean, I could always say Dragon Ball Z, which is like
Okay.
the easy go-to, right? But maybe I liked Rocco's Modern Life. That was some shit. That was a weird show. Oh no, never mind. I'm sorry, Ren and Stimpy. I'm sorry.
That's another
Ren
good
and
That's
Stimpy
another
was
good one, though.
weird, bro.
Okay. What's your favorite genre of music?
Favorite genre of music? I can tell you what I'm into right now.
Okay.
What's that?
Right
that works.
now, I rode the hardest wave of flamenco
I have no idea.
from Spain.
It's
I know.
Layered, bro.
I know what you. I know. I took a Spanish
Rosalia
class.
right now. If you listen to Rosalia, yo,
Okay.
she had me for like weeks. I was in flamenco coma for a while, but I mean hip hop, for the most part.
Favorite snack?
it ain't your turn.
Skipping you. Reverse back to me.
Girl, you had your 3 questions. You done.
You don't come to game night. You don't get to follow the
Cut off.
rules.
Oh,
Damn.
someone's feeling
Wow.
spicy.
Wow.
Just a
Want to
little
talk
bit.
about mother?
Talk about lovers. So, last question for this lightning round. Why'd I just blank?
Should have let me go.
Girl, shush. Favorite food?
Oh, favorite food, type or like dish?
Type.
Type.
Mexican.
Okay.
You got the
Yeah,
right
I'm
way
sorry,
to
I
go.
gotta
That's
do
the
the
right way to go.
default.
All
Yeah,
right.
Fair.
So to finish off this last part, this is the Dear Reading segment. And so this is basically your open love letter to the city. This is any advice that you want to give to the city, anything that we've talked about during this episode that really resonated with you. But it's essentially like a recap, but whatever you want to give away. So we always start and we allow you to go last. So you'll be one of the last voices that they hear. So you can get that, start going in your brain. Anybody want to start?
I just blanked out. I'm sorry. He got me with the Mexican food. I started thinking about what I'm gonna eat later. I got this vegan taco, pulled pork taco, but it's vegan. Listen,
We're still waiting on our vegan mac and cheese.
never gonna happen. What was I gonna say? Oh, Dear Reading, have fun. Just have fun. Like, I know it's all about securing the bag, but have fun. What is it? It's gonna be the 21st when this comes out. 21 days into 2019. Are you still having fun?
Mm.
Okay.
Dear Reading, you may come from anywhere because there's a lot of people, but even though there are bad things, you can still see the positive things in those things.
Dear Reading, as Glyph said while we were interviewing him, as an artist, it's your responsibility to create. And also, please listen to this man's poetry. It's amazing.
No, it
It's
is.
serious.
It really is.
It's amazing. I always tell people like he's my favorite poet. Whenever he's performing, I'm like, yo, listen to this. Like,
He's fire.
but,
Dear Redding, manifest your own destiny. Everybody always talks about, oh, you were so lucky to get blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I manifested that on my own. So let this be the year where you speak everything into existence and go get what you want.
And Dear Redding, don't let fear hold you back. Fuck fear. There's no reason to be afraid of anything, of change, of the hurdles that you face, of the challenges that you have in your life. Go at them. You know, represent your ancestors. Make them proud. Everybody's watching. So, fuck fear.
I like that.
Nice.
I like that.
And fuck D-Will.
What the?
Wow, how do we get back to
Damn,
this?
bro.
You forgot hashtag. Fuck the-
Oh yeah, hashtag fuck D-Will.
Hashtag
And
fuck
fuck
Brie.
fear.
Ooh, rare.
Okay, you don't forget, Bree said fuck the listeners, right?
She did.
Remember that?
Damn,
Gotcha.
No, she's on her own with that.
Yeah,
they
she
they
sure
called
is.
me. They said I was messy. They said I was the messiest.
Girl, you
member.
are. All right. Thank you again for listening. We will see y'all next week.